And a very happy Tuesday to you at 12:09. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wags, the sports desk in Culver City.
John, yesterday in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, President Joe Biden celebrated Labor Day as only President Joe Biden can.
Let me say it loud and clear. Wall Street didn't build America. The middle class built America, and unions built the middle class. That's a fact.
Maybe he's a long hauler.
He was real close to the audience at that rally, too.
How many people do you think he infected at that rally?
He has sneezed on several constituents.
And didn't his wife just test pause?
Yes, she's got the Rona.
Well, good thing she's a doctor. I guess she can treat herself.
She's a
doctor.
Oh, I'd like to introduce you to our new favorite Karen Bastrop that happened while you were away, Johnny.
Was this in regard to the fake doctor?
Doctor.
No, it was in regards to Dr. Valicia Adams-Kellum, the woman in charge of LASA.
Maybe she can introduce Barbara Ferrer like that, too.
Doctor.
No, thank you.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, as many of you know, I was on vacation last week, and Randy was kind enough to hold down the fort while I was gone. Thankfully, I flew out last week and not this week because apparently United Airlines flights are all grounded for some reason or another.
And Delta flights have an even worse problem.
And what's that?
Well, here is the chatter between the tower and a Delta flight that was going out of Atlanta towards Spain that had to turn back around.
Negative. It's just a biohazard issue. We've had a passenger who had diarrhea all the way through the airplane, so they want us to come back to Atlanta.
Wait, all the way through the airplane?
It was not contained to the lavatory, John.
How do they have it all the way through the airplane?
I don't know. I don't really want to know. And I feel like if we have to try to describe it, we will lose our FCC license.
Thankfully, none of my flights included that. I have friends. Oh, God, why am I telling this story? I'm just going to tell it. I have these friends who are middle-class types of people, but they put all of their purchases on their credit cards, so that way when they go on vacation, they can cash in their credit card points and fly first class. When you fly first class, it's like the vacation starts before you even get to your Kathy Lee cruise. And on this particular vacation, they were going to a resort somewhere in Mexico. And at the time, Virgin America was the hot new airline. Do you ever fly Virgin America?
I haven't, but I heard that was the airline where you can buy someone a drink.
That's right. You ordered all of your drinks off the computer on the screen in front of you. The flight attendants dressed like prostitutes, and you could communicate with other passengers on the plane from your seat and buy them drinks as well. It was a whole experience. So these friends of mine were sitting in first class, and the FAA, actually, no one follows this, no one abides by this, but the FAA says that you're supposed to use the lavatory in whichever cabin you're sitting in. If you're in first class, you're supposed to use that bathroom. If you're in business class, you're supposed to use that bathroom. And if you're in coach, you're supposed to use the bathroom with the rest of steerage. Well, they were up in first class, and the plane was taking off. And when the plane takes off, you're not supposed to get out of your seat. The seatbelt sign is still on. You're not supposed to be moving about the cabin. You're not supposed to be in the overhead compartment. You're not supposed to be in the lavatory. You're supposed to wait until they turn the light off, and that's when you can get up and move. Well, there was a woman in coach that really had to go to the restroom. And they were in their seats in first class, and all of a sudden, they see this woman run down the aisle towards the cockpit like she's FloJo. And the woman doesn't rush the cockpit, thankfully. She goes straight to the lab. And after she's in the lab, she blows up the lab so badly that everyone in first class ultimately opted to give up their seats and go take empty seats in coach because he thought the gas masks were going to be coming down from the ceiling.
Oh, my.
They paid for first class, but chose to sat in the back. It was that bad. I don't know what it is about airplanes that brings out the worst impulses in people, but there's just something about them that does that.
Right before you're about to get on a plane is a bad time to be experimenting with food you haven't had before.
That's right. You're thinking about getting on an airplane. When you're at that airport Chili's, don't order the chicken rare. Just don't. Trust me on that. Now, this last week, for vacation, I went to Europe. 3 different cities I've never been to before. I went to Austria, where I experienced that country for the first time. The city was Vienna. Then after that, I went to Croatia, to a city I can't pronounce. It was a coastal city, and it was nice. And then I went to Germany, over to Munich. And I've got to tell you, we do a lot of stories on this radio program about how bad public transportation is, how the metro can kill you. We've learned that from many man-on-the-street interviews that have since turned into drops.
You may want to consider not using the metro.
Words to live by. However, when I was in Europe on vacation this last week, I found myself using their metro pretty much nonstop. And Randy, it was an eye-opening experience. You could use the trains, you could use the buses, you could use the subway, and not once would you ever see someone pleasuring themselves. No open-air drug use, nobody with a sword, nobody trying to rob you. At no point in time did I feel physically threatened when I was on one of those trains or buses or subways.
And I bet they were real clean.
No trash anywhere, no homeless, no safety ambassadors, no graffiti, none of that. Nothing that we see every time we get on an MTA bus or subway was present in Austria or Germany. It just wasn't there. And I kept racking my brain, trying to think, why is it that public transportation works like a Swiss clock over there, but we can't have nice things over here? We're richer than they are. We have more celebrities than they do. There are more people in the United States than in Germany or Austria. Surely we can figure out, with all of our collective brain power, a way to make the buses and subways usable in ways that they probably should not. But no, it's usable and convenient and cheap over there. In fact, there's no turnstiles over there. It's the honor system. And people still bought tickets and paid to ride the bus. You can't do that over here unless you want it to become another homeless shelter. And after I was racking my brain the whole time I was there, trying to figure out why they can do it and we can't, I think I figured it out. I also didn't smell marijuana or see drug use anywhere around me. There's not a permissive attitude about drugs in those countries like there is over here.
Now, if you want to do that, go to Amsterdam.
Pretty much. Amsterdam has people who are walking zombies. In fact, Amsterdam looked like California before California looked like California. But in those other countries, they have designated smoking areas. I do not believe marijuana is legal. If it is, I certainly never saw it around me, and I didn't see any pot shops anywhere on the streets. And certainly, I didn't see any hard drug use. And it is my belief that a permissive attitude about drugs leads to the reality that we live with. I understand the impulse of wanting drugs to be legal. In fact, ideologically, I'm there. ideologically, you'll get no argument from me at all. You're on the planet a short period of time. If you pay your bills, you pay your taxes, you don't abuse your kids, you should be able to do whatever it is that you want to do that makes you happy as long as you don't hurt anyone else. The problem with that, when you live in a welfare state, is that you can use drugs, you can fry your brains, and then the rest of us have to pay for it because now you're a protected class. Now you're a victim. Now you're someone who deserves our sympathy. So not only do we have to let you fry your brain and ignite whatever mental illnesses might be dormant in your head, but then we have to deal with you robbing us and living on our buses and living on our subways and living on our streets and ultimately being jailed for something, some crime related to homelessness or drug addiction, and it costs us a fortune. We can't use the items that we pay for. We then have to pay for your ass, and our taxes just keep going up. If you want to be able to use the trains, buses, and subways, at a certain point, we're all going to have to reverse what we've been doing on drugs. I don't see any way out of it, particularly with fentanyl. When people are frying their brains with fentanyl, thinking they're taking Xanax, thinking they're smoking marijuana that they bought illegally, heroin, whatever, those people largely are beyond fixing. Once you scramble your brains like an egg at Denny's, there's only so much the recovery community can do for you. And when you have a huge chunk of your population scrambling their brains and living on the streets, I don't know how you stop the bleeding unless you take the drugs away from them. Now, after legalizing marijuana and essentially decriminalizing drugs, I don't know how you put the toothpaste back in the toothpaste tube. It would be very difficult because people are now used to being able to do drugs wherever they want to do drugs. And many people enjoy it. They do it and they fulfill all of their obligations. They're not living on the streets. But a large enough percent of them and of our total population can't handle the drugs. And because of that, we have to live with an exploding homeless population and an exploding crime problem. Our politicians go on these junkets all over the globe, and they come up with some BS excuse to do it. Let's go to Austria to look at the trains. Let's go to Hawaii to look at the water system. Let's go to some exotic part of the world to look at something so we can check a box and claim to be on an educational trip. In fact, I think they recently did do a trip to Austria where they looked at their public transit system. The public transit system is fine in Austria. It's totally usable. It's good, cost effective, the whole bit. However, if they go to Austria, that's not what they should be looking at. Because if our system wasn't dirty and disgusting and filled with criminals and homeless people, people would be looking at our system as being a gem too. What they need to do is go over there and look at their drug laws. They need to look at how that country handles people who do heroin and fentanyl and fill in the blank. They don't put up with it. And if you don't put up with it, it's amazing what can happen. We not only put up with it, we encourage it, and we make excuses for it. And one of the byproducts of making excuses for that kind of behavior is you can't use things like trains, buses, and subways. That's just a simple fact of life. If you want to use those trains, buses, and subways, the best thing to do is not make it cheaper or subsidize it more or have Sacramento bail them out. The best thing to do is make it safe for people to use. And the best way to make it safe is to put police officers on there but also stop people from frying their brains so they don't know what they're doing when they're on those trains, or they're not motivated to rob you for more drug money, or the voices in their head aren't telling them to kill. And I don't know how you can do that without getting tough on drugs. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen to us at 301, 302, 303, or beyond, that's easy to do.
That's right. Go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, or go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You could search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube as well. Subscribe to the playlist, and that way, no matter where you are, you can listen to the dulcet tones of John Phillips or Randy Wang or Cecily Meyer Cruz.
Hell no!
By the way, as an added bonus and a thank you to downloading the podcast, if you email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and ask for any drop you hear on the show, I'll send you an MP3 for free.
I've received emails from listeners saying they are turning these drops into their ringtones.
Yes, I don't know exactly how to do that, but some people know how to do that. Someone turned a Cecily Meyer Cruz drop into their text notification.
I think that would startle me if she was screaming every time someone sent me a text message.
I mean, it wouldn't be as bad as some of the other ringtones you used to have.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to tell that story anymore. Happened at church, too, for a wedding. And I blame the old woman sitting next to me publicly. She had no clue what was going on.
We won't be providing that ringtone, but any of the drops you hear on this show,
Doctor.
tell me what you want. JohnnyDon'tLikeShow@gmail.com, and I'll send you an MP3.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Well, yes, let's do that right now, assuming that I printed out the copy, which is right over here. Here we go. 790 KABC welcomes Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening at the Greek Theater on September 23rd. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-2222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Nederlander Concerts. Good luck dialing.
And Randy, we're taking the show on the road coming up.
That's right. A week from Friday, September 15th, Johnny and I are going to be live at the Gelson's in Century City at their wine bar. We're going to be doing the entire show from noon to 3. Maybe we'll do a tasting. Maybe we'll have a burger, but it's going to be a blast. Come down, have lunch with us, have a tasting, get a flight, enjoy yourself. It's a Friday. It's going to be a great time. That's noon to 3 at the Gelson's in Century City inside the Westfield Century City Shopping Center. We will see you there next Friday, September 15th.
The last time I went to that mall, I went with my friend Brooke to see a movie. And it was also the last time I used the LA Times calendar section to find out what time the movie started. There was a misprint in the Times. We went down to the movie theater, and they were off by an hour. We had two options at that point. We could either see the Jonas Brothers film, or we can see whatever the latest Saw movie was. We went and saw the Saw movie. My friend Brooke is an Ivy League educated woman who wears a beret, who had never seen a Saw movie before in her entire life. And within the first 5 seconds of the movie, someone's head got put in a wood chipper.
Oh, my.
By the time the movie was over, she was catatonic. And I had to take her to a bar at the mall, and I had to put liquor in her mouth from a straw like a loving mother penguin would. After I did that enough times, finally, she loosened up enough to start talking about the trauma that she just experienced.
Oh, boy.
I enjoyed the movie, though. Randy, I'm back from vacation. It wouldn't be an edition of the John Phillips Show without opening up the KABC Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, usually when you're talking about criminals, you refer to them based on their cat-like reflexes. In fact, if you're talking about someone who robs a house while you're asleep, they call them a cat burglar because they have to be able to get through cracked windows, and they have to be able to make sure they take what they want to take without waking you up. And to do that, you have to be pretty agile on your feet. Our next edition of the Crime Blotter, I guess you could refer to him as a cat of sorts, but he's more like the Garfield version of cat burglars.
He's a fat burglar.
If you haven't seen this video of this man that we're about to tell you about, he looks like a black version of Norm from Cheers. Is that an accurate way of describing him?
Why, yes, it is. And what we're talking about is a jewelry store in El Monte in the San Gabriel Valley that was about to be the next victim of a smash and grab where this jackass bear maced the entire staff, but the family fought back, smacked this guy with a stick, and then took him out hockey style, ripping the shirt off of his back and chasing him down the street till the guy said he had a gun, and then they stopped chasing him.
I was surprised he could even get out the front door without a stick of butter.
It is a pretty wild image. It's been going all around the internet of the smasher and grabber in El Monte running out at the front of the jewelry store shirtless. And let's just say, much like me, 50 pounds heavier, the man needs a bra.
I'm surprised they could show those images on local television without having the video distort the nipples.
Would you like to hear more about this harrowing tale in El Monte?
Lay it on me.
Let's go to Fox 11.
It's the middle of the afternoon. A man dressed in all black and a Donald Trump mask casually walks down El Monte's Main Street holding an...
Well, I guess he was too fat for any other presidential mask.
Wait a minute. Donald Trump mask? Is it this early where Party City is turning into Halloween City?
Maybe he hit them first.
What was the movie? Ruthless People? Where they robbed the place in, what was it? Donald Duck masks, right?
Yes.
Mask casually walks down El Monte's Main Street holding an empty cardboard box. Seemingly out of nowhere, he whips out a can of bear spray and fires it directly into the face of a man sitting outside Mesa's jewelry store. Moments later, the suspect is inside, smashing a display case when family members who own the store jump into action, trying to wrestle a weapon out of his hands.
Now, wait a minute. When he maced the guy sitting outside the store, was the guy a security guard or was that just gratuitous?
Could have been both. I would assume it's a security guard because if you're a jewelry store owner right now, you've seen what's been going on and you might want some extra security and some extra precautionary measures like making sure all of your staff are armed with sticks.
Wait a minute. If you're spending money on a security guard at your jewelry store, you want him walking around patrolling the jewelry store. You don't want him sitting out in front of the store in a lawn chair like they're Bartles and James.
Then I see that he has a hammer, and then he starts breaking the showcase. That's when we realized that he was one of those guys that just smash and grab.
Think about the preparation for this hit. He's got to dress up in the getup. He's got to put on the Trump mask. He's got his hammer. He's got his bear mace, and he's got his cardboard box that he's going to stuff all the jewels into.
Now, if he were to rob a store earlier in the day or later in the day, does he switch up the mask? Let's say, does he rob the Costco at night in a Hillary mask?
That's when we realized that he was one of those guys that just smash and grab, And at that moment, I thought more people were coming in back of him. And my reaction was like, lock the door so no one else could come inside anymore. But he was fighting back. He was trying to hit with everything that he had on his hands. He had pepper.
Luckily, he tires easily.
I'm surprised he had the stamina to even get in the front door, pepper spray or bear spray all of the employees, take out the hammer, start destroying all the display cases. Could you imagine what his heart rate must have been at that point in time?
If you haven't seen a picture or a video of this man, you can only imagine that the reason he was driven to commit such a heinous crime is that he owes about a $10,000 bar tab at Carl's Jr.
Yeah, and I can tell you this. I don't know if they've booked this guy downtown yet, but when they take his fingerprints and they take his pictures and they do a blood test, his blood type will be ragu.
He had pepper spray. It wasn't normal pepper spray. It was bear pepper spray. He sprayed it all into my dad's eyes, my brothers, and my uncles again. So at that moment, I was very scared. I didn't know what to do. My eyes, my body was hurting a lot. It was burning. It was like chili on your body.
We consider this a violent crime now, Gascon?
Chili on your body. Have you ever cut up a piece of jalapeno? I do this all the time. I cut it up to throw in an omelet. That's the one thing I can make very well, omelets. And whenever I cut up the jalapeno, always, I forget that I just cut up the jalapeno, and then something on my face will itch. And then I'll take one of the fingers that I was using with the jalapeno, and I'll put it close enough to my eye to where I essentially bear spray myself.
I think we've all done that.
Outside, another family member recorded as the would-be thief is beaten with fists and a stick.
I'm glad the family was big enough that they had two people beating him, someone to rip the shirt off, but also someone to film it, because this is gold.
Well, especially when you can't see anything because you just got sprayed with bear mace.
Outside, another family member recorded as the would-be thief is beaten with fists and a stick. He wrestles his way out of the store, losing his shirt in the process.
So you think they ripped the shirt off him and he didn't pull a Hulk Hogan and just tear it off himself?
It's very possible, but it sure looked like they pulled it. They were trying to really grab onto him, and the material of the shirt was weak.
And takes off empty-handed, shouting threats on his way out.
Even a day later, you can still smell and almost taste that pepper spray. You can see it staining some of this broken glass. Why did your family fight back like that?
Because we worked so much for it. We used to work day and night. And just someone to come and grab your stuff, it's not fair.
Good for them.
Absolutely. But you know, if this guy were to have gotten seriously injured, Gascon would be prosecuting this family.
And he'd be going after us for fat shaming him.
Owners say the store is the result of years of hard work and dedication. They say the same man came in about 3 weeks ago.
So he was just asking here, and there, because that's where we had the diamonds.
He seemed so suspicious they kept pictures of him.
We compared the picture from yesterday and the picture from 3 weeks ago is the same guy.
And they wanted to make sure it was a life-size model, so it was actually a 10x4 poster.
Well, they probably ran out of ink.
And it has the same tattoos and everything.
The family is grateful that everyone is...
Yeah, already the getup that we're talking about here doesn't seem like this guy was actually going to buy any diamonds.
No.
The family is grateful that everyone is safe and that the suspect's attempted smash and grab was unsuccessful. But they say change needs to happen at a higher level.
We pay taxes. We're good citizens. We've never been involved on anything like this, and we just want laws to protect us, to protect the business, to protect regular citizens.
I spoke to a lieutenant with El Monte Police. He said more and more fed-up business owners appear to be fighting back like this against would-be robbers. He said the video that was taken is incredibly helpful for their investigation, and they have some very solid leads, but no arrest has been made yet. Reporting from El Monte, I'm Chelsea Edwards, Fox 11 News.
This is exactly where the change is going to happen. Whenever LA starts to bounce back, the change is going to happen in the independent municipalities, not the city of LA. The city of LA right now is totally hopeless. But you look at the map of LA County, and you look at those cities, specifically in eastern LA County, places like El Monte, places like Whittier, places like Laverne, Glendora, that have seen a spike in crime because of our permissive policies towards criminals, specifically George Gascon and Prop 47. And when change happens, that's where it's going to start. And it's going to have a ripple effect in other parts of the county. But you saw already so many of these independent cities take a vote of no confidence in George Gascon. And you look at where Alex Villanueva did well countywide in both of his races, and this is where his support came from. These people did not vote for Gascon. These people voted for Alex Villanueva. And what we need is we need to run up the numbers, because we're not going to win in Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles. But if we could run up the score in El Monte and Glendora and Claremont and all of these other places, that's how we can fix this.
You want to really insult Gascon? Vote him out in Cudahy, where he's from.
That could happen. Well, COVID is coming back, Randy.
Don't say it so.
No, thank you.
Yes, apparently earlier today, it was revealed that Whoopi Goldberg from The View would be missing the first show back for the new season because she tested positive.
Rising crime in California.
As did the First Lady of the United States, Dr. Jill Biden.
Doctor.
And now, get this. A D.C. area elementary school in Montgomery County, Maryland, is reinstating a mask mandate. And not just any old mask mandate, Randy. They are now requiring N95s.
Oh, well, we're done with the cloth ones. They already admitted those were useless.
Anything other than N95s would not be compliant in this elementary school. I guess a few kids in the third grade tested positive, and now they want to bring the masks back again.
Well, this is what I don't understand. You have superintendents like our own Alberto Carvalho who straight up said, send your sick kids to school.
And he said this, we're not talking about ancient history. He said this not long ago.
This was just a couple weeks ago.
Because LAUSD doesn't get paid from Sacramento unless you send your kid to school. And now they're saying COVID is so bad again that in this particular school in suburban Washington, D.C., the kids are being required to wear N95s.
And, in fact, Johnny, I will dig it up. I didn't want to do it because you weren't around. But guess who had a press conference last Thursday?
Who?
I have no idea.
And she was even asked, why are you saying sick kids should stay home? And the superintendent is saying, send your sick kids to school.
Next slide.
It had to be Marla that asked that question.
No, here's the thing that irritated me. They didn't send Marla. They said Phil Schumann, who I do love.
Okay. Was Phil the one that asked the question?
No, they only took questions from Ron Lynn and Howard Bloom.
They wanted a home game, huh?
Yes. But I'll give you that exchange later on in the show today.
Well, if anyone is going to use this as an excuse to come back and bring the mask mandates with her, you know who it's going to be.
No, thank you.
She's like Jason with the hockey mask. You just can't get rid of her.
Yeah.
All right, we've got 2 more hours coming up right here on the John Phillips Show, Talk Radio 790 KABC.
Doctor. Mr. MD. Doctor. Now can you tell me what ailing me? Doctor. You said yeah.
Yeah.